All right, Nana, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, dude.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us more about the nature of your business?
For sure. So I help people achieve their goals by helping them to shift their mindset. And so
Mhm.
essentially, I love helping people live their purpose if they don't know what that is, to help them discover it. And then once they do know what that is, to really live it well, with great health and abundance in all areas of their life.
So when you say
Mhm.
shifting a mindset, what do you mean by that specifically?
Yeah, so basically, with all of our results, whatever's happening on the outside is a direct reflection of what's going on inside of us. And so, if we don't really tend to that, sometimes people can start spinning their wheels in outward action when really they have a set of beliefs that run the show. So you can never outperform your beliefs or your self-image, and that's exactly what I help people with. So it's the mindset. So if someone believes they can do something, then the chances are very good that they will. If they
Hmm.
believe they can't do something, they might not even start, they might not even try. They might
Hmm.
not even admit to themselves something that they really want for their life.
So
Yeah.
seeing behaviors as a product of our internal world and our belief systems, and then what you would do, if I'm understanding correctly, is work on those belief systems, be more in line with the kind of behaviors and outcomes that someone wants.
Totally, totally. With all of our results, about 95% stems back to our mindset, and only
Mhm.
about 5% is strategy, which was kind of a mind-altering concept for me when I,
Mhm.
when I really understood that, because it was a game changer for me.
In your experience, what are some of the common blocks or barriers that you'd have to work them through?
Yeah, so let's take someone who's maybe in their 9 to 5 job, corporate job, and they've been doing it for a while, but they sort of have this fantasy and they dream of becoming an entrepreneur, going into business for themselves. So what I often see with that population is that they might just leave that dream of becoming an entrepreneur just a dream, a fantasy, and they don't act on it because they have no idea how they're going to get there. They've never done it. Maybe people in their family have never done it, and the message was, go get a good job, corporate benefits, and
Mhm.
that's the belief system that they grew up with all their life. And so to break out of that is very challenging for a lot of people. It can be scary for a lot of people. So because of that, it can really hold people back from pursuing what it is that they would love to do. And that's not just with like the 9 to 5 to entrepreneurial journey, but that's just an example of
Mhm.
that. And so um, I find that whenever someone is going for a big goal, it's the start that stops most people.
Mhm.
Right. So they don't even let themselves dream big. They don't even let themselves admit what they really, really want. And even if they do admit it, they might not even let themselves go for it unless they just, that desire is so strong that it can override their limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So limiting beliefs. I hear that word kind of like here and there in different articles, a lot of it
Hmm.
in entrepreneurship
Hmm.
content out there. So what exactly do you mean when you say the word limiting belief?
Anything that limits you from getting to the next level, right? So it could be, gosh, it could be something like, um, well, we've never grown beyond 20% year after year. So, wow, considering 100% increase, or a 2 times, 3 times, 10 times increase in growth or performance, they can't even imagine that. They're kind of stuck on the 20% growth only. So that would be a limiting belief. Or
Mhm.
a limiting belief would be, oh, when people talk about, well, they're so great at presentations, but I'm just not. I'm
Mhm.
just not good at that. When they say, this is the way I am, or this is the way I've always been kind of shy. I've always let someone else do the presentations or whatever it is.
Mhm.
I've always let someone else do the sales. I've always let someone else do the writing. I'm just not good at that. So when you define yourself, like
Mhm.
I am not that way, or I've always been,
Mhm.
that's a major limiting belief. It boxes you in so that you can never really outperform that, right?
Mhm.
But then when you break down that box and that barrier, and you decide, well, for me to become, if it's an entrepreneur or take it to the next level, really scale up, I'm going to have to think very differently. I'm going to have to think and operate very differently from that box that I have been living in and have created. So an idea that would shift that would be, well, I haven't done that yet, but I can figure it out. I haven't done that yet, but let me learn about how to acquire those skills. I haven't done that yet. I would love to double my business or income. I have no idea how to do that, but I know that that's what I want to do. So all of a sudden, you don't let your previous experience or your previous limiting beliefs hold you back from pursuing it. Yeah.
Okay. And tell me more about your journey in that brought you to where you are here. Like when did you realize that this was the kind of work that you really want to get involved with? And when did you realize that this was the business that you need to start to continue doing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had been practicing as a naturopathic doctor, and I had opened up a clinic, and I was seeing wonderful patients, helping them. And, I really felt like I found my calling working with people, helping them with their health in a natural way. And on the personal side, I was going through a pretty major shift. So I was going through a separation. I had a young daughter. And we were just going through the motions of, okay, well, we've got to split up our assets. We've got to split up the house. Might even have to sell the clinic. And I caught myself one day thinking, wait a second, there's so much change going on. And even though it was fairly amicable as separations go, it was still very challenging. And I thought, well, I don't have a lot of family close by. My neighbors, my school district for my daughter, this is my community, this is my family. So I don't want to move. And so that new idea of, well, let's stay put in the house meant that, okay, well, somehow I'm going to have to replace that second income. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. It really scared me. But I actually did find a wonderful mortgage broker who helped with the financing, put it all together, which was great. But I actually wasn't replacing that second income fast enough. So I was in a very scary spot. And even though I was devouring all of the right books, podcasts, and videos, it just wasn't shifting for me in the way that I knew I could do. Like deep inside, I knew I could, but I just wasn't making it happen on my own. So what I ended up doing was reaching out to my mentor and got proper guidance and direction. And that's when everything shifted for me. I actually pulled out all of my money from my marketing budget and put it all into personal growth and development. And once I started to shift things on the inside, my outer reality completely transformed. My business picked up to the level, and it was so consistent. It was like month after month after month of that new level that I thought, okay, well, if I could do this for myself, I would love to help other business owners do the same. And so I ended up running my clinical practice and my consulting business in parallel for a while. And now I've completely switched over to the coaching and the consulting, just because I can help people with all sorts of goals in a much deeper way. So that's a little bit of my journey.
Yeah. So one of these leadership books I was reading, they talked about problems in kind of two major categories. I don't remember exactly the terminology that they labeled it as, but the definition would be, one would be kind of like technical issues. These are things that we need to do differently or change in order to move forward or overcome whatever issue we're facing. And then there's the other set of problems, which are the bulk of leadership issues, not just in organizations, but everywhere in life, is we need to be different. We need to become different people in order to move forward and solve issues or grow bigger, or whatever kind of goals an organization or a person wants to deal with. And it sounds like what you're doing is very much paralleling a lot of what this leadership book was doing.
Absolutely. So one of the interesting things that if I trace it back to my own experience as an entrepreneur, was to invest pretty heavily into strategy.
Mhm.
I definitely was interested in the business component of it, and not all practitioners are, but I was, because I knew that was the key to my success. So I invested heavily in marketing strategies and different programs and mentorship specific to that. And it was all very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. But in terms of producing the results, it kind of fell flat, right? And
Mhm.
I was like, what is going on? Because it does make sense. But the reason why it didn't yield the results was that they were just simply missing the mindset component, which is, like I said, over 95% can be traced back to that. And so whether it's one person as a solo entrepreneur or a mega corporation, so it would be the corporation's culture, which is just
Mhm.
a collection of individual mindsets or paradigms, like that's the language that I use. But if you don't get to the root cause of the results, which is that the culture, the mindset, and grow that,
Mhm.
the growth is going to be really incremental, if at all.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Language is really, really powerful because it's a reflection of how you see the world and operate. And so um, this was something that was shared to me that was really, really helpful as I was going through, the major changes in my life and business. And that is, if you have a small problem, you will have an equal and small opportunity or small solution. And so this actually, there's the law of polarity, which states that there's negative and positive in everything. So
Mhm.
inherently, everything is neutral. It's just how we perceive it that colors our experience or perception of it. So if we see something as negative, or if we see something as toxic, that's what it'll be. But if there's a perceived challenge, and it's a big one, there's a big challenge or a big problem, then if you were to flip it and look at the other polarity, there's an equal and opposite, uh, potentially huge solution or opportunity there,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So if there is a major, and this takes a lot of work. I mean, this is at a level of mastery. um, when I work with people for a while, for them to just even wrap their minds around it. But once people do, once you start seeing everything as good, because there is good in everything, it just shifts everything.
Mhm. Give me an
So if
example that comes to mind
yeah,
of
yeah.
the law of polarity in action in one of your clients.
Wow. There are so many. So let's take it down to a personal level, because most
Sure.
people will be able to relate to this. Where I had a client that was going through a relationship shift, and there was property involved, and it was very, very challenging. The split was very, very challenging for them, and instead of getting sucked into what could be very, very negative and going in that downward spiral, what we did was we just kept focused on, okay, well, what is the good in the situation? And sometimes you have to really dig deep. And I actually did this for myself personally as well, is um, I got to a point where I was really grateful for the separation happening, because what it showed me was that I'm capable of being strong and independent, that I was responsible for all of my results, that I couldn't anymore blame someone else for my happiness or for feeling lack of support, that it was me. So if I wanted to be happy, then I was responsible for my happiness. And same with this client. And so we just kept working on that, working on that. So eventually they saw that the situation that was really challenging was actually a gift in disguise, that it was showing them that they could be independent, that they were very resourceful, and they collectively settled the property, and everyone won in that situation. And so it allowed them to dig pretty deep. And then at the company level, an example would be what might, I had a client, or I have a client who is looking for a space, a larger space to expand, and nothing was seeming to go right with it. But then all of a sudden, it seemed like it was out of the blue. It wasn't actually out of the blue. There was an opportunity to go into a space that was much larger, was a better fit, was lower, at a lower price point. So the initial challenge, or the initial perceived challenge, was, the place that they originally wanted didn't seem like it was working out, even though they really wanted it. Along comes another one that was even bigger and better, right? So when we get in the habit of, okay, what is the good, what I call harvesting the good in any situation, we start to become much more responsive instead of reactive. So we just pause our initial knee-jerk reaction and ask ourselves, well, what's the good in this? So if someone is released if they're fired from their job, they can ask themselves, so what's the good in this? If they pause their knee-jerk reaction of, oh my gosh, this is devastating, this is horrible. If they ask themselves, well, what if it was great? What if this was an opportunity? Let me find the good in this. So maybe it leads them into a position, or them starting their own business that they've always wanted to, or whatever it is. And we can do that with everything in our life. I just named a few examples here, but it's a good way to live.
Yeah. And then something that's really interesting is pain is opportunity. Right? So seeing an example of your client who was looking for that new piece of property, well, I'm sure there's a lot of reasons and a great deal of emotional attachment for why that first property or the second, or however many that you went through, was just absolutely perfect. But then to be able to have the mindset of, okay, we didn't get this one, but you know what? We'll find a better one.
That's right.
We've found multiple great properties so far. Didn't close on them and get and get the ones we wanted, but it also means that there's a lot of other really good ones out there. Right? And I'm just thinking for myself here, when I think about toxic work environments and toxic workplaces, and in my experience, what that ultimately did was, I realized I don't actually have to be here.
That's right.
I could just go anywhere. I'll just go somewhere else. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to starve. But then there was this really interesting kind of time period where I felt like literally if I left and I didn't have that income coming in, my life is over. I'm dead. I'm going to be homeless. Yeah,
let's talk about that, because that's a profound shift that you went through, David. You went from operating out of severe fear, right? And not even realizing that you had options, to really understanding that it's a choice for you to be there, right? And that you could continue to choose to be there, or you could choose something else for yourself. And that is huge. That's so empowering.
Yeah. And I think part of the reasons why I was in that almost a scarcity mindset and this defensive mindset of fearing that if I leave, I'm going to die, is it was my first job out of university. So that weird trap that 20-something-year-olds are in, where you need 5 to 6 years of experience for an entry-level job that pays basically less than an intern. And then when I was able to finally find a job that was employing me full-time, I felt okay, I'm stuck here for X amount of time, or else no one else will ever hire me. And the reality is that's just not true.
That's not true. That's a great example of a limiting belief, right? Right? If you work with a certain assumption, then, who knows? You could have stayed there for 6 years, right? Totally unhappy. So that's the power of really shifting at the belief level, because whatever you believe will be true for you. Whatever you believe is true for you. So if that's all you or anyone listening to this takes, I encourage people to write that down all over the place. Whatever I believe is true for me. Then if you want something different, you shift what you believe. You shift what your assumptions are.
Now, where do you draw the line between shifting a belief to align with our goals and just insanity?
Well, insanity is doing something like over and over, expecting different results.
Or sorry, being delusional.
Okay.
There are, I guess, like, I'm actually studying counseling right now, and one of the words that we'll use would be like grandiosity or delusions of grandiosity. So some people, you kind of hear this a lot in like uh, the rap community, where people talk about, like, yo, I'm going to be this big, have this much money, I'm going to get all these albums, all these rewards. And there's a lot of like grandiose delusions of self and self-worth and what they're all about. And of course, the behaviors don't necessarily map to that, and the reality isn't necessarily there. So there is the beliefs and what we hope to be true and want to be true, and the actions that we do to work towards there. And then there are some that, like, okay, that's just a little bit delusional there. Where's the line between ambition, goals, and delusion?
So if you take a look at anyone, I was reminded of Jim Carrey. Do you know the Jim Carrey story where he wrote himself a check for $10 million?
I vaguely recall that. I think I saw a video somewhere.
Carrey or Oprah, or like, yeah, there's so many examples of people who have done remarkable things, started from nothing, right? So maybe most of the world would have called them delusional, and that's fine. But what other people think of you is none of your business. So if you hold strong to that, if you stay steady with that and hold to your vision, and when you know how to get an idea from just the dream state into really impressing it into your subconscious mind, or the mindset, the 95%. And that's the space. Like that's where most people get tripped up, is they don't know how to take an idea from the fantasy state, from the conscious mind, right into the deep subconscious mind, where all of our results come from, pretty much all of the results. So that's the space that I work in, because we might have read books or watched videos and podcasts and things, but people don't really know how to get that idea really impressed into the mindset and the subconscious mind. And a lot of times people don't know how to shift it on their own. In fact, my mentor will say he's never known anyone to shift their mindset or their paradigm on their own. So that's why mentorship, guidance, support is really, really important. And so once you really embed an idea into the mindset, into the subconscious, then your body moves into the required necessary action, right? Of course, action is very important, but what a lot of people, they make the mistake of going into empty action and like heavy action without changing anything of what their belief is. So if their belief or their assumption is, well, it's never going to work out, but I'm going to go into this action, but I don't believe that it's ever going to work out, then their assumption is much more powerful than the action. So this is where you might have people with grandiose ideas, or the rappers, or saying all these incredible things, and some of those, a very small minority of those people, when they know how to really take an idea into their subconscious mind, those are the people who are going to make it happen. Those are the people who win. Those are the people who say like incredible things, and then they make it happen. Whether it's like creating smartphones or airplanes or rocket ships or whatever, a mega business, it all comes down to that ability to do that. And some people who are successful, they're actually not aware, they're not conscious of how they've done it. So if they were to try to do it again, it's not as repeatable. So we call those people unconscious competence. But what I love for everyone to become is to become a conscious competence. So I could show you exactly how to, if you tell me what it is that you want, it could be incredibly big. When I work with my clients, I encourage them to go for what I call a C-type goal. And if any of your listeners are interested, they can check out a free training masterclass at nanajokura.com, and they'll learn more about the different ABCs of goals. But I'll do a quick summary here. A-type goals are something that you already know how to do. Like an accountant doing an accounting job, just wanting to switch firms. Same job, but it's just, it's a sideways move. No growth in that. They already know how to do that. A B type goal is something you think you can do. You want to do it. You think you can do it. You haven't done it yet, but if this works out, that works out. We just, work with this. Yeah, they think they can do it.
So like the side hustle. I think I'll try some photography to supplement my income.
Yeah,
haven't done it before, but seems kind of interesting.
Seems interesting. And yeah, maybe I'd like to earn, a few $1,000s extra, right?
Okay, so that would be a B type.
That would be a B type goal. Let's take the photographer at a C type goal. This is what they really want. They don't know how they're going to get there. They have no clue how they're going to get there, but they know they would really want, they'd love that. So this would be the photographer who wants to be full-time with the National Geographic, or, to totally, it's not a side hustle. It's their full-time gig. They're earning whatever it is that they want. And that for them might be a C type goal. And so you really want it. You don't know how you're going to get there exactly. You might know the next obvious step, but not the, 10 or 100 steps that follow. And it also will probably terrify you and scare you. So I actually work with my clients, whether it's companies or individuals, with their C-type goal. And most people most people aren't used to thinking like that. So they might label it as delusional, but I label that as the only thing that's going to allow you to break your old habits of your old mindset and belief system. Because if it's not something big enough, what happens if people just settle on a B type goal, if it gets tough, that side hustle photographer, if it just gets tough or they get rejected.
It's just a side hustle to begin with, so it's not a big loss.
So yeah, and they're just kind of comfortable in their cushy job. So they might just go right back to safety and bondage, which is the A type. They'll just go to what they know instead of stretching and growing, which is the purpose of a goal.
Okay. And how about the utility of using, say, a B type goal as a way to transition into a C type? Just want to dabble into some side things for now, and then maybe if it works out, I'll scale it bigger.
Not going to work. And the reason why, David, is that it's uninspired, right? So this is what people do is they like to play it safe, realistic. Those terms I just am not a fan of. I like having people park those at the door when they start working with me, because and it's okay to have B type goals. It is, but in the context on the way to a C goal, which is different.
Okay.
Right? It's a little bit different from what you suggested, which is, well, let me just try and dabble with B. I don't know if I can even let myself want C for right now. I'll just go with B. But then, there are going to be some challenges along the way, and it can really knock people off course. Like, it's not going to be enough to really make a significant shift at the mindset level and then ultimately at the results level. So what I recommend for everyone listening is you pick your C goal. And it might take a process of discovery, but once you discover it, you know what that is. And then you can map out B goals along the way. Then you can, they're going to be the milestone goals or base camp goals on your way to the top, on your way to the summit. So those are very useful for sure.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Now, when coming up with a C type goal, should they be broad or specific?
A goal is going to be measurable. So once you achieve it, when it is specific, could be the number of people you're going to impact, the number of dollars you're going to generate in revenue. It will be specific, or for some people, it might be a goal to own 5 properties, right? So that's very specific, and you'll know when you've hit them. You'll know when you've achieved them. If it's broad, that ties in more with someone's purpose, right? So your purpose is why you get up in the morning. This is what really lights you up. Your vision, which is a little bit different than the purpose. Your vision is going to be the picture of what it's going to be like to live your purpose in all aspects. It's the image of, like, what's your your health like? Where are you living? Who are you living with? Who are you enjoying your time with? How are you enjoying your time? What kind of contribution are you making? What does your company or work look like? Those kind of details. And then a goal is a chunk out of your vision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So the goal would be take the vision and start breaking it down into manageable chunks and start working towards those base camps that you mentioned to climb to the peak of that mountain, which would be the C-type goal.
C goal. Yep, exactly. Mm-hmm. You got it.
Yeah. Okay. And that option, stupid thought when you're saying that, I was like, okay, this reminds me of that really popular kind of internet meme question that was going around a few years ago, where would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I just trying to get a picture of that in my mind.
Yeah.
A horse.
One horse-sized duck.
So basically one or lots of small.
Yeah, swarm of little duck-sized horses.
No, are they all running around everywhere?
Yeah. I've always felt that the answer to that question is 100 duck-sized horses, because then you're reducing whatever, like you're taking on a problem and you're reducing them into manageable individual bits, versus taking on something like a duck that's like horse size would be really scary. It could fly, it could swim, it could run on land. Have you seen what a duck can do to like a caterpillar? And if it was horse size, I'd be like caterpillar size. I mean, it's not pretty.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. It's just we don't want to. I want to make sure people put it all in context, right? So it's not just the one. I forget. Are we going for the duck or the horse? Just the one small thing and stopping there, right? And that's the traps that most people fall into, and it breaks my heart because they ultimately stay stuck, right? So if they're playing small at the A or B level and they don't see beyond, so yeah.
A and B is just a means to your ultimate end, which would be C.
Exactly, but you want to lock on to C. You want to know where you're going. Yeah. Right
from the get-go, you intended for the C-type goal, and then the A and B is just those are steps. Versus, let's just start with an A, and then maybe we'll do a B.
No,
and
people
then
rarely. No. People rarely progress out of it because there's so much fear, right? Like we're not really taught as kids to. I mean, I think there's lip service paid. Oh, you can grow up to be anything you want, but you should really get a corporate job with good benefits. So it's mixed messages, and I feel in our education as young people and even higher education, we're not really taught how to tap into our amazing mental faculties like imagination, reason, will, memory. We do. That's maybe the only one really, but perception and intuition. All of those mental faculties are the key to us bringing much more of ourselves to the party, right? And really, really digging in and tapping into our potential. So
it's interesting you mentioned that. The modern educational system. I mean, that's something I really love to criticize, because it's what you describe is actually by design. So during the time of the Industrial Revolution, when people shifted from an agrarian and kind of an artisan-based society, the people who were the most powerful would have been the factory owners. And what they were lacking were people who are smart enough to follow instructions and to repeat a certain set of tasks basically indefinitely. And they also needed people who could be kind of like cogs in a machine, because this was like the age of machinery and interchangeable parts. So then by working with the government, creating a school system, which, think about it, you have the cafeteria where everyone's lining up, you're sitting in a box going through standardized procedures with a foreman or your teacher, and then a bell rings and everyone gets up and they're conditioned behaviorally to just do what they're told. And if you don't measure up based on grades on an approved set of standards, then you're cut out or you're doomed to repeat it, or you have essentially no place in the intended output of these educational systems. And the thing that there is utility to that for the people who own the factories and the people who own, eventually when we developed into a knowledge society, then it was go to college, because then now you develop a different set of skill sets once you learn to follow instructions from high school. so that you can do accounting or legal work or engineering work for even bigger corporations. But before that, before the transition into this kind of industrialized um, society, people would have been more like a mentorship type situation. You have a master and an apprentice. If I wanted to be a shoemaker, I would follow a master shoemaker, whether that's a relative, my own parents, typically like my father or something like that, or someone out there who is a master shoemaker that I can follow, until I level up to a place where I can create a masterpiece and then present that towards a society of other fellow masters, and then become one and then take on my own apprentice. So that's what you're describing about finding a mentor, having a mindset shift, and not doing it ourselves. It just sounds more in line with how most human beings have operated for the larger part of society until the very recent changes in this whole into what we're doing now, into just almost like producing wholesale people.
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting perspective. I mean, I think if you look at a situation and you don't prefer it, then I am a fan of focusing all of my attention and energy toward creating what it is I do want. So if it's a new model that I do want to create, let's put all our energy and attention to that, right? So because different systems, different models serve their purpose, and the more we create what it is that we want to see in the world, then there's this synergistic effect that happens. And yes, the mentorship model, I mean, it will date back to the shoemakers for sure. And I think it's especially important in this time because there's so much information out there that it can be really overwhelming. And I speak from personal experience. I mean, I was a self-help book video junkie, like really. I mean, I still love all my books, but now through guidance and mentorship, I know how to assimilate it and use the information, not just consume it, you know, but really understand how to implement and then act and then create results based on it. So I think that's, I mean, you see it a lot. It's a huge industry, but being really selective in who you work with. So someone obviously that resonates with you, someone who can explain potentially big concepts, complicated, complex ideas, and reduce it down so that it's very simple, easy to understand, I think is really, really important. And I actually wrote a book called Your Healthy Success, and it talks about some of those it talks about the mental faculties that I mentioned and the ABCs of goals. And I believe the highest compliment that I could be paid is that actually a few of my clients said this very recently. They're just really loving it. And they said, you know, it's like you're able to communicate all of these amazing ideas from classics like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. But what you've done is you've updated it. So it's this modern take and it's super simple. And my client was like really careful not to, you know, it's not in a negative way at all. It's fantastic that it's so simple and easy to understand, because then it stays with him, you know, then he acts on it, then it's there, it's like burned into his mind. And so that was a really high compliment for sure.
Simplicity is hard to accomplish.
It is
really easy to make things complicated. Anyone who's tried to build a website knows that.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
So if you had to redo everything over again, what would you do different this time?
Like, what do you mean everything, David? Like business wise or my life, or
let's say business. Yeah, for business. Everything in your business you had to just start from scratch. What would you do different this time?
It's a good question. I'm grateful for everything, so I actually don't have any regrets, because every piece of it, every part was huge learning opportunity. But I did invest a lot in marketing. before really understanding that the results come from within me. Because there's a couple different ways that you can go about marketing where you're really solid and you're building on a foundation, and it's an expression of your deeper message and what you're communicating, what you're about, and you're coming from a place of abundance. But in the early days, you sort of scramble and you're like, oh my gosh, I just need marketing. I just need more people to know about what I'm doing. And it's like shifting all of your power to something outside of you. So the marketing firm or the advertising budget. And you're sort of, I found that for some pieces I was throwing money at something, which, if I knew that working with a system, mentorship, and support, if those three pillars of shifting the mindset, if I knew about that earlier on, I would have invested heavily right away into my own personal growth and really getting the foundation of knowing exactly how to shift the mindset. Because once you know that, you can shift it again and again and again for any desired outcome and goal, right? So that's what I would do. But it took me a few years in, and it took a lot of struggle and pain before I realized that I needed that help. And then once I got it, everything changed for me. So I'm grateful. And I don't say that, I don't regret it, because now I know exactly what, a younger business owner would be going through, and I can guide them through, and, I can say, oh yeah, I made those mistakes too. So maybe that, yeah, but I'm so grateful for every step of the way. So I really, I have loved it all. Yeah.
All right, awesome. So if our viewers want to get in contact with you or learn more about what it is that you do, where can they reach you at?
I would tell them to go to nanajokura.com, NANAJOKURA.com. If they wanted to pick up a copy of my book, then it's available on Amazon. So they would just look up my name and Your Healthy Success, or they could go to yourhealthysuccess.com actually, and they can get all the bonuses with the book. So what they do is they get the book and then come back to my website and enjoy those bonuses. And on my main website, there will usually be a free training or masterclass so that people can start thinking about what it is they want. I guide them through, and it's a great training. So that's what I'd recommend. And then if they wanted to get in touch, they could just send me an email, info@nanajokura.com, with any questions. I'm really happy to help anyone in any way that I can. So yeah.
All right. All that's going to get edited on the screen. All right.
Perfect.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
That's all for this interview. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with the different interviews that we have with more business owners.